So, how do you like the new? Actually, what you should do: max out the amounts of rooms, and then see if you can find multiple libraries and see if it makes a difference. Because I wanted to make them feel a little
Yes.
less uniform.
That's under the tiles, isn't it? And here, if I turn up the room fraction to,
I mean, maybe I'm not seeing that screen.
what do I need to turn it up to?
I mean, 90, 100, I don't know.
Okay, I'll try 100, and then I will redo the game, and maybe you will see it again.
I don't. I see me. You close
Oh.
that window.
Yeah, I'll need to reopen that window. It's just loading up at the moment. There we go. Now let me make it full screen. Now let me Alt-Tab out and share that window with you. And I don't know why I'm giving a running commentary, but...
Because all they can see is nothing. There we go. I can see it now.
And, oh, it has actually switched back to it. So, boop, there we go. So I'm going to regenerate just to keep things fresh. Whee! Straight in, to a double room with the bug.
Yep. And that shouldn't be happening. Like, I think there's an order of operation problem going on here, because if it knows the wall is being removed, it should know that the door is being removed too. But see if you can find a double library, or a triple library, or a quadruple library.
Yes, it's pretty impressive when we get the rooms themselves. I mean, this should be almost all rooms now.
It is all rooms.
Which actually makes navigating pretty difficult. Is there a chart? Oh, here we go. Here's a nice double room.
Yes, but it's not a library, but yes.
It's not a double library. Sometimes you get rooms that are being spawned that are L-shaped, and I really, really like those.
There we go.
Oh, whoa! This is a mega library. It's a T library.
So I'm hoping that the little variations in each section should make them feel a bit more natural.
And of course, this one's naturally going to have a hole in it to walk through. Oh, this is awesome. And again, once it's got books in and is populated,
right, and potions and whatever else, skulls.
Yes, I mean we could spawn in a little area with a table with a spell place.
I mean, I want to improve my prop generation system, because right now I'm not happy with it. It's spawning in every possible thing and then removing all but one feels very messy.
Yes, spawning everything in when you could spawn a certain collection of items in would make more sense.
Well, it's just like pick one and then spawn it, as opposed to here's everything. Wow. Give me 1 second. Cat is singing the song of his people.
He wants water, he does. So yes, this is really coming along now, and I do love the first-person view. It does feel like a different game at the moment from the third-person aesthetic that we were going for and gameplay that we were going for before, but this is really just about the maze generation, and then later on we will get to the point where we have
L-shaped bar.
Yeah, nice, eh? Just talking about it being in first person at the moment has a completely different feel. And from this point you just carry on with it and make a first person action.
Yeah,
RPG.
I mean, we're not worrying about character or NPCs. We're not worrying about inventory. We're not worrying about spell system or combat or anything like that, because it's not what this specific course is about. There are downsides to this specific maze generation, not least of which you end up with nonsense, like a huge long corridor at the end of which is a bar, a little door, little corridor, second bar. Like, that's entirely possible. Makes no sense, but it's possible.
That's procedural generation for you, isn't it?
Well, there's different ways you could do it, right? You could use a different algorithm which says, okay, these rooms have to be a certain distance apart. You can't, have them separated by these kinds of things. But for every one of those rules, you have to sit down and think about them and write them.
Yeah, of course. And then you start getting quite restrictive. But yes, does it make sense to have a bar in between these two rooms?
Well, yes, because they're skeletons.
Where
else are they going to sleep?
What, the bar? Wait.
I mean, they should really have a dance floor.
You want a disco room? I mean, this is getting there. This is the server room.
Of course they need a disco room. I mean, how else are they going to listen to Boney M?
No. Oh, no. There we go. So that's... Yeah, I do like the fact that this now generates these multiple, not multiple size rooms. It brings things together and actually makes it... Oh, I've been here. How do you know I've been here?
Mystery. Natural sense of direction.
Mystery. So yeah, this is really coming on now. And so the Mage generation is
I mean, at
almost
some
there.
point, I'll need some more assets. The maze generation itself is pretty solid, with the exception of the door bug. Um,
Oh, where did I used to get stuck?
there.
You never guess what I've done. Yep, I'm stuck. I'm good at finding bugs. I am.
I mean, that's not a bug. It's just a Mikey trap.
It's a feature.
It's like the squeaky portal or the skull that falls on your head.
You know I'm going to do it, so it's got to be there. Right, I'm
So
going
I've
to.
learned some interesting things about optimization.
Yeah.
Not least of which the way that we've got collision shapes on rigid bodies makes a huge difference if
Yeah.
you're using complex shapes, or specifically if you can't use trimesh shapes on a rigid body, but if you're using a detailed convex shape, it will slow the game right down.
So one of the things that Jan and I were discussing, was it yesterday or the
Nice
day
one,
before?
Ryan.
Bare bones. I like it. So one of the things that Jan and I were talking about the other day was, where do we do the collision shapes? Because in one sense, Godot accepts if you parented things in a certain way, I could put dash col or dash col only.
Well, let's you missed an important part. When he's
Okay.
making it in Blender, if
Yeah.
he names things a certain way, Godot will automatically import them.
Yes. And so, what is a favorite skeleton's favorite meal? Goulash. Yeah, I didn't read the second bit. So, uh, um, so yeah, where do we make the collision shapes? Do we make them over in Blender and just import them, or do we make them over in Godot? And if I make them over in Blender, they don't come through as a collision layer that Jan's going to find useful, because when we've got hundreds of objects and they've all got tri-mesh collisions on them,
Well, shall I show what I've actually got?
yeah, that'll be awesome.
Give me a moment to load Godot, and then I'll share my screen. Um,
Ooh.
so this came about because the little bar stools we have, as you've seen in the storage room, I have a whole bunch of stools on top of each other, specifically because I know Mike is going to want to push them. Like, that's why I put them in. Share my screen now. But the problem I had was that my original collision shape for the stool was a cylinder. So you hit a stool and it would just roll forever and ever and ever, which is not actually what you'd expect, because if we look at the stool, it's a three-legged thing. So then I decided to try this, right? I said, well, what happens if we actually do a single convex collision shape? And it makes this. Now, this works okay, but if I try and run the game, when it runs, la la,
There we go.
top right, you can see my frames per second. I'm maxing at 30. And if I find a stool,
Oh, that's fortunate.
oh, it's actually improved now. I was dropping down to 2 frames a second at one point.
Ouch.
So then I was thinking, well, maybe we don't want anything that complicated. So instead, I went in and I just deleted the wrong thing. Nope, there he is. I went in and I just made a cylinder on top and then 3 cylinders where the legs are. And that behaves a lot better. And then we got the same problem with the chalice. Like, do we want this to be simple or not? Well, this kind of wants to be jagged. And I found that simplifying this actually doesn't make much of a difference. So there's a real divide, not a dividing line, there's a balance to find. Then you get things like the throne. I could make this a tri-mesh collision layer, right? But that really slows the game down. When you touch it, it really struggles to figure out where you're supposed to be. So you'll
Yeah.
notice an immediate drop in frames. So instead, why
I
not
should
keep it
also
simple?
imagine you'd get it being quite jerky during that interaction as well, as it's trying to work
Right.
out
You
which
get a sudden drop
surface.
in frames
Yeah.
and then it comes back again. And that's the kind of thing you notice. So the question was, should Michael be automatically generating the collision shapes in Blender? because he can, right? He could just say, take this and generate a collision shape for it. And I think we've gone with the idea of no, because the simpler we can keep them. Let me find one of the corridor pieces. And if I just look at the colliders,
You can see how much simpler those are. And of course, one of the things you might think is, oh, well, you could make those collisions. You could do a bounding box collision around objects in Blender and export that. Well, I've done that before. I think in Godot Getaway we were doing that for certain assets. And
mhm.
the problem is, it still comes across as a much more detailed collision shape. In Godot, there are certain primitives that are far more optimal.
Well, it's also a box.
Yes,
And there are times you don't want it to be a box. Like if I want the stool to roll,
you need
it
cylinders.
needs to not be a box, right?
Yes.
It can't be a single box, maybe multiple boxes, but let's find a stool and
And there are actually multiple times we're going to come across places where, okay, we can do this in Godot, or we can do this in Blender, and that's one of the things, right? You need to make a decision as per the project that you're working on. Does it make sense to do this particular thing, whether it's collisions or whether it's some procedural materials or something like that? You need to decide as and where you're going to create those things.
now if I was really worried about it, I'd notice that the stools are actually pentagrams or pentagons. So they shouldn't be rolling quite like this, but with the legs the way they are, it rolls a lot better. When they were cylinders, it didn't work at all. Same with these cups, right?
Well, they kind of
Like we
just
don't want them
continue
to be
rolling,
cylinders,
don't they? If you make something a solid cylinder, it will just roll until it stops,
right?
which is not what these do.
Whereas these roll much better now. On the other hand, these are just boxes. They could just be boxes at this point. I'm just going around because I can. And these are coins. Hello, coins. Nom 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 nom.
I love it.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
That's all right. And we're back again. Well, actually, just you're back again. I need to click a button for that. This one here. There we go. And he's back.
From outer space.